In this video, we're going to talk a little bit about how to practice um, trading in the simulator. And we're picking the current day, and we notice right off the bat on the VOL workspace, the TPO VOL, that the previous day high was 76.25. And thus far on this day, we've only made it to 75.75. Okay, so there's a bit of a struggle to get up there, but no doubt that will happen very quickly. But in the meantime, we want to look at opportunities to trade this. And one way to practice this is to make sure that you have this chart on the screen. Now, we've just copied and pasted the stochastics chart onto the RSI pivot chart so that we have the ability to verify the contrarian as well as the overall trend. Now, one would think that in the light of the high of the previous day that we're going to remain long until we hit that, which is very likely. But in the meantime, there may be other opportunities to short this when the trend is confirmed. So the idea here is we have the ability to confirm the trend in the contrarian on the stochastics chart. And then on the pivot chart, the RSI pivot chart, we're going to be watching the premium and then using the trading app here, chart trading, to execute trades. So what you'll want to do is make sure that the settings allow you to see your trades. So we go into settings, we go to data, we check the ES. Oops, that's not quite all we need to do. Account orders and positions. And we go down here to settings. We click on display. Now you can customize this using whatever arrow arrangement you want for both buys and sells as well as exits. Okay. So now we're ready to display the trades on the screen, and I'll just do this for example. If we hit buy, we should
order filled,
see an arrow show up on the screen as we did here. Okay, if we sell,
order filled,
we exit the trade, there's an exit arrow here. So that's how it's going to display. And we can change the number of contracts right there. So what are we likely going to do here? Market's coming down a bit. Now you don't have the advantage of the profile on this screen, but if you have the matrix up, you would notice that right now we're at a low value, well, not a low value area, but we are at a low area of historical volume. Okay, let's see if we can blow this up a bit. There you go. All right, and if you practice reading the matrix, you'll also notice that this is an area where we're oversold, oversold at the moment. I'm pretty sure we are. Let's pull it back to the other screen. Okay, hang on for a minute. Screen's being a little contrary. Okay. So as the market came down into that area of previously low volume, we notice that yes, we are oversold in here. So right as we get into that area of low volume, we see where the premium is. Now the trend of the premium temporarily was down. The market came down as we saw. And then we hit this low, and we're going to look at the premium, and we see evidence of a slightly higher low in here. Okay, right there. So that could be a good opportunity to take a long trade. All right. Right as this is turning. Now, if we did, it moved up a bit and we got into an overbought condition again, right there at the high. But that was a nice, simple trade. So let's see if we can't go ahead and just take a couple of trades in here. Now, as the slower CFB here is now beginning to turn, a real good opportunity to take another long trade would be if the faster CFB comes down and hits zero, and this is turning up. That could be a good long trade. Now, what we also want to keep in mind is what's happening to our trend here. Now, I should mention, let me just blow this up a little bit more, that when the slower stochastics, the longer stochastics, the 50 and the 25,000 share bar, has remained in a overbought condition, hitting 100 for an extended period of time. All right, for an extended period of time. And then the 10K begins to shift and slow K begins to drop below slow D. There could be evidence here that the trend is beginning to shift to a short. Okay, so you watch these numbers to make sure that slow K, you know where slow K and slow D are in relationship to that. And as we have mentioned in other videos, there are opportunities to short this, even though the overall trend is going to be long. As this kind of thing happens, it may generate some successful short trades, even though that target up at 76 still has yet to be hit. So you just have to watch this. So like, for example, right in here, slow K had just temporarily dropped below slow D. Now it's back up above, all right? But the very fact that slow K dropped below 100 could indicate that this is a temporary short. And right in here, as we moved up to this high, we now want to look at the premium to see whether this would have been a good time to short. And as you can see, we moved up to this high. We're now coming down. We might have considered taking that trade, possibly. All right, a lot of explanation goes into these videos. It's not always possible to just pull the trades while we're trying to explain. But one thing that I would be a bit concerned about is the fact that the slower CFB has already moved up. And that's generally an indication of a long and not a short. So as this is coming down, if this is at 100 or at 90, in other words, and this is coming down to negative 90, and this is pulling down and beginning to turn, that's really a long, not a short. So we're just going to let this run. So right in here, okay, we got into an oversold condition on the 100. Stochastic was turning up here. Pardon me, the RSX was turning up. So getting into a long trade right in here, that made sense. This also should begin to turn up, and it may, after we come down a bit, and then turn again up. That should generate a positive slope on the faster CFB. Now, as the slower CFB is now beginning to turn, that's going to pull this market back down. So the real safe places to execute trades, long trades, when this has already moved down like it has here and is just beginning to turn up, all right, that can be a good opportunity. Now that means that the faster has to be in agreement. So as you can see, as this is moving up, the faster was moving down. So right in here, because this is the RSX is even faster than the CFB. So you're going to want to see this moving up, even though this is lagging a bit. All right. Now, if you want to play it really safe, you wait until it's turning. And you can look at the numbers here. Negative 1785, 31, 64, 32, 32, 15. There it is. There's your turn. Now, in this particular situation, the price didn't vary that much. But in a faster moving market, you may have to anticipate that. So getting in right as this is turning in here, that makes sense. So now we're moving back to 75. This is going to continue to move up. All right. Now watch what happens as this is continuing to move up. This was moving down. Now that does not mean that you shouldn't be long in here, because what will happen as the premium on the slower chart was moving down, as this hits the negative 90 mark, what's liable to happen is this will turn up right as this is then turning up. and this market will move higher and probably move higher much more quickly. Now this is weakening. So as that's getting ready to turn, again, this little move up here on the stochastic chart, here's your low, another opportunity to get in here, as well as here, and even here. But we're almost to the point where this is going to push higher and possibly hit the high of the day. A couple other things. Here you notice the 5K. The fast K is below, well, slow K is below slow D. That's what Jurek calls it. But this is just, I'm not going to pay really any attention to it because the overall trend is up. The fact that this is moving down a little bit doesn't concern me. Now, this is beginning to turn up. This is likely going to turn up as well. Now, as this moves up, if this fails to turn, then likely what will happen is that the CFB will hit the maximum, come back down, hit zero, turn again, and then this slower CFB will begin to move. We'll come back in a minute. All right, there we have it. Now, at the low here, the fractal should begin to turn down. There will be a corresponding move up on the Spoos. So as this was coming down, notice the fractal was in agreement with that move. Now, as you see this is turning down, that's beginning to turn up. So if you were looking to take a long trade, you're going to want to watch that fractal, because you could be fooled by the fact that you had a higher low right in here. But the fractal didn't begin to turn until right in here, okay? Now, come over here, you look at this, see if you're oversold. Pretty good indication that this is going to turn, so that's where you're wanting to go long, right? Right in there corresponds to this move here. And as you can see, the RSX is moving up. This is already moving up, so that's a good place to go long. You'd put in a stop right below that, right below it. Had you gotten into a trade right there, all right, as this moved up, and then you notice that the RSX and the CFB is beginning to move down, you've definitely got to put in, you've got to have your stop in and probably tighten that stop, because premium says we're coming back down. Now, as you watch this data over here, the 2.5K, notice that it was moving up, but right at that high, the slow K dropped below slow D. And look at where we were at that point, 54, 55. Now it's down to 28. This is still coming down and will continue to come down. So yeah, that looked like a good opportunity to get in. Things have changed. Now you need to be out of that trade and you need to wait. This is going to come all the way down in all likelihood, all the way down to 0. That means this is going to drop further into 70 or perhaps even below. We'll give that a minute. So, and I might mention, in the light of that, if we get into a nice overbought situation, shorting the trade could make that could make some sense. This is moving up to positive 90. We obviously have not made a big move up, so that's going to turn down again. See where we're at right up there? That was your short. Now see the 5K? Just hit 0. And we sit right around 70. So for example, if you were now beginning to think about going long, keep in mind what's happening here. The 10K is continuing to drop, 5K is at 0, and now the 25K slow K is drop below slow D. Now on the 10 and the 25, both of these are short. So here's where it takes a lot of discernment to know whether or not you should try to get into a long trade here, because this could continue to move down. And look at where the CFB is here. So let's
Order filled.
take a long trade here, just as an example. Normally, we would want the CFB to be down, turning up from negative 90. It's way up here. And while this is beginning to move up, we're already in a what might look like an overbought condition. We'd rather have it way down here when we go long. And look at what happened to the premium right there. There was a little bit of a drop there in the premium. So while it may have appeared that this was a good time to go long, at the same time, this could easily turn against us and stop us out for a significant loss. Again, if this continues to move down, it's going to go right through 69, drop a full point, and probably continue to move down to closer to 68. All right. So that's why it would be good if you execute a trade there to go into the matrix and make sure you've got a stop. The stop's not showing up here. Let's just go back. Check out the settings here. There we go. So now I've moved my stop to one tick above the entry so that if this comes back and I don't hit my little profit target there, I don't lose any money. But this does not look proud at all. And we say that because we're down here at
Order
0.
filled.
Okay, and we got stopped out, see? We're down here at 0. This became overbought at a lower high. And that's one of the ways that you can know that this is not going to work. In other words, it's not going to continue moving up. So right at the top, you notice what started to happen here. This started to move down. And when this is moving down, the Spoos are moving down. If it's moving up, Spoos are moving up. It's just that clear.
Order filled.
So we took a short right in there, as we could see that this all is short in here. So we grabbed that short, and as we mentioned, this is probably going to continue on down, according to what I see on the matrix, maybe around 68. Now we're down to 68 right now. And as you can see here, that's a $200 profit on a single contract. Now we're going to exit. And we got out of the trade right here as the CFB was just beginning to move up. Now that little dip in the premium may suggest that this is going to come back down. It wouldn't surprise me. But as the premium was moving against me, I decided to pull the trade. So that's how you do it. Okay. Now, there's on the threshold workspace, you can do the same thing. This is real simple to read. This is very simple to read. And just in case you didn't know exactly how we did this, let me go back. Let's pull up this other workspace. So here you see in the Prem threshold workspace, we have the same chart, the stochastics. And all we did is we just came into the chart, we copied the window, and then pasted it into the RSI pivot workspace so that we would have both charts visible. But as this has several, come on, let's do it this way, has several charts working, all right? We've got 4 charts in here. These two that are currently minimized. But whatever I'm trading with, if I'm using this chart, I'm going to want to have the stochastics available as well. So I can watch carefully whether our trend is changing and where our contrarian is located at what price. Okay. So here, so what you can do as you're working with this, and I would recommend this approach, turn off any indicator that you're not really practicing. Okay. So for example, I'm going to go in here to the studies, edit studies. And I'm going to turn off any indicator that I'm not really following. So if I'm just going to trade with this, hypothetically, all right, I'm going to turn off okay. So the only indicator that's on right now, other than the market profile, is the TSC. So this way, you're in a position where you can practice one indicator at a time. So for example, you're just going to focus on how this particular indicator behaves. And as you can see, as we were moving up to this little high here, we hit this overbought condition right in here. The indicator began to drop right at that high, and down we came. And now we're at 64, and this is going to continue to drop. So this all changed to a short, as you can see. The 10K is down at 0 now. So as we mentioned previous to this, that when the 25 and the 50 sustain themselves at an overbought, or for that matter, an oversold condition, and the 10K begins to turn, all right, that's when you want to take a real close look at the premium to see whether this market is likely to be going short. And that's exactly what happened here. So yeah, you're in a short here. You're no longer long. All right. So you go in here and you just work one indicator at a time till you learn how it's behaving and you learn how to read it. And once you're done with that, turn this off and go to the next one. So here we turned off the TSC, and now we're just watching the divergence hunter. And what do we learn from what just happened? As the market came down to this low, and we were at the low range on the divergence hunter, we came into a almost an equal low, not quite. Or did we? 63.25? No, actually, that doesn't look right. 62.75. Okay. All right, and this is 63. This is a higher low. But normally we want to be looking at a lower low or an equal low. This is not a lower low or an equal low. So naturally it ought to be higher on the band. So we're still short. And all that move amounted to was a 1, 2, 3 standard deviation move. And now we're turning down again. So as we go lower, all right, this is likely going to turn, let's see, the low over here was 62.75, okay? Now we're at 62.75. Again, we're right down into the band. You don't want to take a long trade here. If this is a higher low, that's how you're going to read this. Now there may be other factors that would tell you differently, but when it comes to reading this indicator, you're going to read it with the idea in mind that when we're at a lower low but a higher low here, that kind of divergence is a good time to go long using this indicator. And as you can see, the premium is still coming down. So you do this, one at a time, just as we were saying. Turn it off. Look at the next indicator. Okay, you go in here to studies, edit. These are appearing in no particular order, by the way. You can sort this according to data streams by just clicking on the column title. So I'm going to first work with those indicators that are on the ES before I start looking at the premium. Okay. Now here, for example, that showed divergence as well. And in here, this is showing divergence. Okay, because that's the low on the indicator. Lower low here, higher low here. Okay, so that is an indication of divergence and a potential opportunity to go long. Although you want to be very careful about that because all of the trend indicators, the major trend indicators, are short. But that's what a long would look like, okay? And we may, in fact, move all the way up to the POC, the point of control up here. Premium was in agreement with that as well. So you take it one at a time. And then you may have favorite indicators that you find easiest for you to read. So the ones that perhaps you're not liking that much, just turn them off. Because there's a fair amount of redundancy built into these indicators. All right, let's just move along here. So again, I'm just going to sort this. Oh, I should mention something here. This indicator, let's take a look at the settings in this. The top and bottom lines have nothing to do with the performance of the indicator. The DWMA length, as this drops, this is going to become more choppy. So let's just take it down to 20. Okay. Let's take it down even further. It actually didn't change that much. Right? The reason it didn't change that much is because of this particular function. Now this we built into the indicator to smooth it out. The default setting on this is 6. All right. The higher the number, the smoother the effect on the indicator. Now, this is, generally speaking, we just put this on data 1. But you will notice that there's a second one down here. And it is also sitting on the ES, data 1 being the ES. In this case, that's a 5-second chart, but this is a 15-second chart. So we put a second one on the 15-second chart, but we generally do not use this on the premium. It just doesn't work very well. It's designed to work on the Spoos. And just to show you, let's see if we can get that to propagate. There we go. That's setting up here. So it's going to be smooth, more smooth than this, because it's on a 15-second chart. Okay. Looks like we're going to make it up to the POC. All right, let's go back into edit. Turn these off. Sort that out again. Turn this on. Okay. So this works a little bit like the CFP. pardon me, the CCX. Pardon me, the CCX. And as you adjust these settings, you've got 3 settings in here. A low and a high channel. And if you don't know what all of this means, you want to go into the product manual for Jurek and examine what they, how they describe these features. Okay, this is the default setting, and the JMA, all that's going to do is smooth out these curves. So you've got, this is a little noisy in here. Watch what happens if I double that. Okay, it just smooths out the data. Okay, so work with that. We'll come back in here again. And go on to the next. So we have some pivot paint bars in here. We're not going to worry about that. Then in data 2, we have the premium. So here's where you're going to want to really work hard on the premium. Now that indicator is sitting right on the premium itself. And you don't have to have it there. You can put it into a subgraph. But the idea here is for you to learn how to read the premium. If this is moving down, the premium is moving down. And you should be able to see that, all right, with lower lows and lower highs on the premium. Here, obviously, we were moving up. Then we started moving down. Then it wasn't until right in here that that indicator started to move up again, right at that low. Okay? So now as this moves up, if we get all the way to 65 or 67.25 as we just did, all right, you look at where the premium is here. This is potentially a good place to short. Now you'd want to consult with the stochastics, but this is generally a good time to short this right as it moves up. We're not on a new high on the premium. We're at a lower high. So this could be a good time to short. Now there's another indicator that's also on the premium. We're going to pull both of them into the chart right now. Sometimes, okay, there we are. Any indicator that is either on the premium or below the premium data feed is sitting on the premium. And again, you can check that very easily. You go into Edit, general base study on that verifies what it's on. You can find it that way, but you can also find it when you go into the general heading here, edit studies. And this also tells you what data feed the indicator is sitting on. Now you also need to know and be aware of what data is in the chart. And of course, to do that, I'm going to go down here to data, edit symbol, and now it shows you all of the data feeds that are on that chart. Some of them are invisible. We only need one ES chart visible. And the way you do that, you go in here to scaling. Subgraph is hidden, so the data won't show up. So just as we mentioned here, right, as we moved into this, the probability that the market's going to begin to move down is pretty good because it had to make its a retracement all the way back there. And once it does, it generally turns. But again, you want to watch, got to look at the other charts. So let's bring that back. Here we are. All right. So as you can see, as we came back up, the 50K is still short, the 25K, the slow K didn't even budge. It budged a little bit on the ES10. That's normal on a retracement. But as you can see, even though this moved up to a high of 1067, it's now beginning to move down again. So unless this, again, unless we were in a prolonged short and this is just beginning to turn, you can ignore this. The 5K, when this hit the high, we were not above 50. So I'm going to consider taking a short in there right as we moved up into this bar. If everything is in agreement, we're going to look for a short. Okay, so I won't go through this beyond what I've said. The whole idea is you want to have this chart readily accessible as you work with each indicator. And keep in mind, there's 4 charts here. So this needs to be on at all times, and then you can move between the indicators and the charts. So if we minimize this and we bring up this chart, you do the same thing. Okay. Now my chart trading window disappeared. Let me bring that back. Where did it go? There we go. And then here's the last of the internal charts. So you click on this to get the chart trading window to appear in that window. Okay. And these are our fractals. All of this, there's only one indicator sitting on the premium. The fractals always sit on the ES. This is the simplest workspace on this prem threshold workspace, the simplest chart, I should say. Raw data on the premium, CFB on the premium, fractals, contrarian. Okay, so work with it. Now, if there's an indicator that you want, of course, you can always add it to a chart. We don't have a market profile in here, but you could easily add one. And the way that you add the study is just like that. So we might come in here and add the EBTU intraday to the chart. Just click on it, hit OK, and then it'll add. Okay. So there we have the market profile now on this chart. And we came right into this upper value area and we penetrated right through it. Okay, so if you want to add an indicator, that's how you do it. Okay, all right, so that's about as far as we're going to take this video. Hopefully this gives you a good idea of how to proceed practicing how to trade with the premium threshold or the RSI pivot. And once again, if you don't want to have that many workspaces, you can copy the RSI pivot chart into the prem threshold chart. You'll have 5 charts inside that workspace then. So it's really up to you how you want to do that. Okay. All right, that completes this video.